Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon watching the stars drift past the massive viewing screen. The ship had been traveling through deep space for 3 months now, mapping new star systems and looking for planets that might support human life. Jake had been doing this job for 20 years, and he loved every minute of it. There was something magical about being the first human to see a new world, to wonder what secrets it might hold. The Horizon was not a military ship. It was built for exploration, with laboratories full of scientific equipment and a crew of researchers who spent their days studying the universe. Dr. Lisa Martinez ran the biology department, always excited about the possibility of finding alien life. Engineer Ben Carter kept the ship running smoothly, his tools and spare parts scattered throughout the engineering bay. These were good people, Jake thought, dedicated to expanding human knowledge and finding new homes for their species. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines and the occasional beep from the sensor stations. Lieutenant Amy Foster was monitoring the long-range scanners, looking for anything unusual in the void ahead. Ensign Rick Johnson handled communications, keeping the ship in contact with Earth Command through quantum relay stations. The crew worked well together. Like a family that had been traveling the stars for years, Jake was reviewing the mission reports when Amy's voice cut through the calm atmosphere. "Captain, I'm detecting massive energy signatures ahead. Multiple contacts, very large, moving in formation." Her voice carried a note of excitement mixed with concern. In all their years of exploration, they had never encountered anything like this. "How large are we talking about?" Jake asked, moving to stand behind Amy's station. The sensor display showed several enormous objects moving through space in perfect formation. Each one was at least 10 times the size of the Horizon, and there were dozens of them. "Each ship appears to be over 2 kilometers long, sir. I count 37 vessels in total, all moving at high speed directly toward our position." Amy's fingers flew over her controls, trying to get more detailed readings. "Captain, these ships are not human. The energy signatures are completely unknown, and the hull materials don't match anything in our databases." Jake felt his heart rate increase. First contact with an alien species was something every explorer dreamed about, but it was also incredibly dangerous. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe, and now they had their answer. "Then, what's our status? Can we outrun them if we need to?" Ben Carter's voice came through the ship's communication system from engineering. "Our engines are running at optimal efficiency, Captain. But those ships are moving faster than anything we've ever seen. If they want to catch us, they will." Jake made a decision that would change everything. "Rick, try to open a communication channel. Let them know we're peaceful explorers from Earth. Amy, keep monitoring their approach. Everyone else, stay calm and follow standard first contact procedures." Rick worked frantically at his station, sending out signals on every frequency they knew. "Broadcasting on all channels, Captain. Universal mathematical sequences, basic pictographs, everything we have. No response so far." The alien ships continued their approach, and as they got closer, the crew could see them more clearly on the main screen. They were beautiful in a terrifying way, with smooth curves and strange angles that seemed to shift and flow like living things. Lights pulsed along their hulls in patterns that might have been decoration or might have been weapons charging. "Still no response to our signals," Rick reported. "But Captain, I'm picking up some kind of transmission between their ships. It's on a frequency we've never seen before, and the language is completely alien." Dr. Martinez had come to the bridge when she heard about the contact. "This is incredible, Captain. We're witnessing history. The first meeting between humans and another intelligent species. We need to document everything." Jake nodded, but something felt wrong. The alien ships were not slowing down or changing course. They were approaching an attack formation, spreading out to surround the Horizon. "Amy, are you detecting any weapons on those ships?" "That's hard to say, sir. Their technology is so advanced that our sensors can barely understand what we're looking at. But those energy buildups along their hulls look like they could be weapon systems." The largest of the alien ships moved ahead of the others, coming to a stop directly in front of the Horizon. It was massive beyond imagination, a floating city of metal and energy that dwarfed the human vessel. Strange symbols glowed along its hull, and Jake could see smaller ships moving around it like insects around a giant. Rick, try again. Send them everything we have about humanity. Our history, our culture, our peaceful intentions. Make sure they understand we're not a threat. Rick's voice was tense. Still sending, Captain. But there's something else. I'm detecting massive energy spikes from all their ships. If those are weapons, they're charging them up. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Red alert. All hands. To battle stations. Raise shields and prepare for evasive maneuvers. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, but Jake knew their exploration ship was no match for these alien vessels. The Horizon had basic defensive shields and a few small weapons for dealing with space debris, but nothing that could fight a fleet of warships. Ben's voice came through the communication system. Shields are up, Captain. But they won't hold long. Against weapons of that size, we need to get out of here. Amy, plot a course back to Earth, maximum speed. Before Amy could respond, the alien ships opened fire. Beams of energy unlike anything humans had ever seen struck the Horizon's shields, causing the entire ship to shake violently. Sparks flew from control panels, and the lights flickered as the ship's power system struggled to cope. Shields at 60%, Ben reported. They're using some kind of plasma weapon. Our shields can't handle this for long. Jake grabbed the communication microphone. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Horizon. We are peaceful explorers. Please respond. We mean you no harm. The only answer was another volley of energy beams that brought the shields down to 30%. The alien ships were methodically destroying the Horizon, taking their time to ensure nothing would survive. Captain, we need to abandon ship, Amy said. The escape pods are ready and the emergency beacon is prepared to transmit our final message. To Earth, Jake looked around the bridge at his crew, these good people who had trusted him to keep them safe. Begin evacuation procedures. Get everyone to the escape pods. Rick, transmit everything we've recorded about these aliens back to Earth. Make sure our people know what's coming. The crew moved quickly through the ship, helping each other reach the escape pods. Jake was the last to leave the bridge, taking one final look at the alien fleet that had destroyed his ship and his crew's dreams of peaceful first contact. The escape pods launched into space, small lifeboats carrying the survivors of humanity's first encounter with hostile alien life. But the aliens were not finished. Their ships methodically hunted down each escape pod, destroying them one by one with precise energy blasts. Jake's pod was among the last to be destroyed. His final transmission to Earth carried a simple message. They showed no mercy. They are coming. Be ready. Admiral Helen Rodriguez stood in the command center of Earth Defense Headquarters, watching the horrific footage from the Horizon's emergency beacon for the 10th time. The images were burned into her mind now, but she forced herself to watch. Again. Captain Morrison's final transmission, the systematic destruction of the escape pods. The cold efficiency with which the aliens had murdered every human they could find. The quantum communication had reached Earth 3 days ago, and the planet had been in chaos ever since. President Marcus Webb had called an emergency session of the Global Security Council, and representatives from every nation were gathering in Geneva. But Helen knew that talking would not be enough. The aliens had shown their intentions clearly, and humanity needed to prepare for war. General Chris Mitchell entered the command center with a stack of reports under his arm. His face was grim, and Helen could see the weight of responsibility in his eyes. The mobilization is beginning, Admiral. Every military base on Earth is being activated, and the reserve forces are being called up. We're looking at the largest military buildup in human history. Helen nodded, her attention still focused on the tactical displays showing Earth's current defenses. What about the civilian population? Are they ready for what's coming? The president's speech tonight will explain everything. We can't hide this from them, Helen. They have a right to know that we're not alone in the universe, and they have a right to know that we're at war. The speech would be broadcast to every human on Earth and in the colonies. President Webb had been working on it for hours, trying to find the right words to tell his species that their greatest fear had come true. They were not alone in the universe, and their new neighbors were hostile. Dr. Amanda Foster arrived at the command center, carrying a briefcase full of classified documents. She was the head of the theoretical physics division, and she had been working on humanity's most secret projects for years. Admiral, I have the report you requested. The Solar Defense Initiative is ready to move to the next phase. Helen had known about the Solar Defense Initiative for only a few months. It was a collection of research projects that had been developing new technologies in complete secrecy. The government had been preparing for the possibility of alien contact for decades, and now their preparations would be put to the test. What do we have, Doctor? Helen asked, opening the briefcase and scanning the documents inside. Amanda's voice carried a note of excitement despite the grim circumstances. The quantum drive project is complete. We can now build ships that travel faster than anything we've ever imagined. The plasma weapon systems are ready for mass production, and the artificial intelligence network can coordinate fleets of any size. Helen felt a surge of hope. Humanity had always been good at two things: surviving and adapting. The aliens had destroyed the horizon, but they had also given humanity something precious: knowledge of what was coming and time to prepare. General Mitchell was studying the weapon specifications. How long to build a fleet with this technology? 6 months for the first wave of ships. The factories are already being retooled, and we have enough raw materials stockpiled to build 10,000 vessels. The AI systems can be installed and activated within weeks. Helen walked to the window overlooking the city below. People were going about their daily lives, unaware that their world was about to change forever. Children were playing in parks. Couples were walking hand in hand, and families were gathering for dinner. All of this would be threatened if the aliens decided to attack Earth. We need to contact the colonies, Helen said. Mars, Europa, Titan, all of them. They need to know what happened to the horizon, and they need to start preparing their own defenses. The colonial settlements were humanity's backup plan. If Earth was destroyed, the colonies could carry on the human race. But Helen had no intention of letting it come to that. The aliens had made a mistake when they attacked the horizon. They had awakened something in humanity that had been sleeping for too long. President Webb's voice came through the communication system. Admiral Rodriguez, please report to the presidential bunker. We're about to begin the emergency broadcast. Helen made her way through the secure corridors to the bunker deep beneath the Capitol. The president was standing at a podium surrounded by cameras and communication equipment. His speech would be transmitted to every human settlement in the solar system. My fellow humans, President Webb began, his voice steady and strong. Today I must tell you something that will change our world forever. We are not alone in the universe. 3 days ago, our exploration ship Horizon made contact with an alien species. That contact ended in tragedy. The president paused, letting his words sink in. Helen could imagine the shock and fear spreading across the planet as people realized what he was saying. The aliens destroyed the horizon without provocation. They killed every human aboard, including civilians and scientists who were exploring space peacefully. They showed no mercy and made no attempt to communicate. This was not a misunderstanding. This was an act of war. Helen watched the president's face as he continued. She could see the anger there, the determination that had made him a leader during humanity's darkest hours. But we are not helpless. For years, our scientists and engineers have been preparing for this possibility. We have developed new technologies, new weapons, and new ways of defending ourselves. We will not go quietly into the night. We will fight for our survival, for our children, and for the future of our species. The speech continued for 20 minutes, explaining the mobilization plans and the new technologies that would protect humanity, but Helen was already thinking about the next steps. The aliens had superior technology, but they had never faced an enemy like humanity. They had never encountered a species that could adapt and evolve so quickly. General Mitchell approached her after the speech ended. The response from the colonies has been overwhelming. They're all volunteering to join the defense effort. Mars is converting their mining equipment into weapons factories. Europa is training their population for combat. Even the smallest outposts are preparing to fight. Helen smiled for the first time in days. Good, we're going to need every human in the solar system for this war. The aliens think they can destroy us like they destroyed the horizon, but they don't understand what they're dealing with. Dr. Foster joined them, carrying another set of classified documents. Admiral, I have an update on the AI project. The system is learning faster than we expected. It's already developed new battle strategies that our best generals never thought of. Helen looked at the documents, seeing plans for space battles on a scale that humanity had never imagined. The AI was designing fleets of ships that could fight across multiple star systems simultaneously, coordinating millions of weapons and sensors in perfect harmony. How long until we're ready to launch our first attack? Helen asked. The first battle group will be ready in 4 months. The flagship will be called the Retribution, and it will be the most powerful warship ever built. The aliens destroyed one of our ships, but we're going to destroy their entire empire. Helen felt a cold satisfaction at those words. The aliens had made a terrible mistake when they attacked the horizon. They had shown humanity that the universe was a dangerous place, but they had also shown humanity what it needed to become to survive. The war was coming, and humanity would be ready. Admiral Tony Harrison stood on the bridge of the UES, Retribution, watching the final preparations for humanity's first strike against the alien empire. 6 months had passed since the horizon's destruction, and the human fleet was ready for war. The Retribution was 1 kilometer long and bristling with weapons that could crack planets in half. Around it floated 10,000 smaller ships, each one deadlier than the entire alien fleet that had murdered Captain Morrison and his crew. The quantum drives hummed with power as the massive fleet prepared to jump across the galaxy. Tony had been chosen to lead this first attack because of his experience in space combat, but nothing had prepared him for commanding a force this large. The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, checking weapon systems and navigation computers. Everyone knew that this moment would decide the fate of humanity. Captain Nicole Brooks commanded the fast attack group that would lead the assault. Her ship was smaller than the Retribution, but faster and more maneuverable. She had volunteered for the most dangerous part of the mission, because she wanted to be the first human to strike back at the aliens. Her parents had been killed in the colony raids that followed the horizon's destruction, and she carried their memory with her into battle. Agent Danny Walsh had been working behind enemy lines for months, gathering intelligence about the alien empire. He had learned that they called themselves the Zephyrians and that they ruled over dozens of conquered worlds. Their empire was built on fear and violence, and they had been expanding across the galaxy for thousands of years. But Danny had also discovered something important. Zephyrians were not the only species in their empire. The target for the first attack was Veltar, a mining world that supplied rare minerals to the Zephyrian military. The planet was lightly defended because the aliens never expected anyone to attack them in their own territory. Tony smiled grimly as he thought about the surprise they were about to receive. "All ships report ready for quantum jump," announced Lieutenant Pete Wilson from the navigation station. The young officer had been promoted quickly during the war preparations, and he was nervous about making his first jump into enemy space. "Execute jump," Tony ordered, and the entire fleet vanished from Earth's solar system in a flash of light. The journey across the galaxy took only minutes with the new quantum drive technology. When the fleet emerged from hyperspace above Veltar, the alien garrison was completely unprepared. The Zephyrian ships were scattered around the planet, some docked at orbital stations and others patrolling the outer system. None of them had their shields raised or weapons ready. "Target all enemy vessels," Tony commanded. "Fire at will." The human fleet opened fire with devastating effect. Plasma beams and quantum torpedoes struck the alien ships before they could respond. The Zephyrian vessels were powerful, but they were designed to fight primitive species with simple weapons. They had never faced anything like the human war machine. Captain Brooks led her squadron in a high-speed attack on the orbital defense platforms. Her ships moved like angry wasps, darting between the massive alien structures and striking at their weak points. The platforms exploded in brilliant flashes of light as their power cores were destroyed. On the planet's surface, the Zephyrian ground forces tried to organize a defense, but the human ships in orbit had complete control of the space around Veltar. They could strike any target on the planet with precision weapons that left no chance for survival. Commander Rita Johnson was leading the ground assault forces when she discovered something unexpected. The mining crews on Veltar were not Zephyrians at all. They were members of another species called the Veltari, the original inhabitants of the planet, who had been enslaved by the aliens centuries ago. The Veltari were small humanoid creatures with gray skin and large eyes. They had been forced to work in the dangerous mines for generations, and many of them had died from exposure to toxic minerals. When the human soldiers arrived, the Veltari thought they were facing another group of conquerors. Rita removed her helmet and approached the frightened aliens slowly. "We are humans from Earth," she said through her translator device. "We are not here to hurt you. We are here to free you from the Zephyrians." The Veltari leader was an old female named Zara who had been working in the mines for 50 years. She looked at Retta with suspicion and fear. "You say you come to free us, but why would you help us?" "We are not your people." "Because the Zephyrians attacked our people first," Rita explained. "They destroyed one of our ships and killed everyone aboard. We know what it's like to suffer under their cruelty." Zara's expression changed as she realized that the humans were also enemies of the Zephyrians. "They have ruled us for so long that we had given up hope. But if you truly mean to fight them, we will help you in any way we can." The Veltari had detailed knowledge of Zephyrian military installations throughout the galaxy. They knew where the aliens kept their weapons factories, their troop bases, and their command centers. This information was exactly what the humans needed to plan their next attacks. Agent Walsh had been right about the enslaved species. As news of the human victory at Veltar spread, other conquered worlds began to send secret messages to the human fleet. The Antarians, the Krillians, the Tessarians, and dozens of other species all wanted to join the fight against their oppressors. Tony stood in his command center reading reports from across the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire was much larger than humanity had imagined, but it was also much weaker. The aliens had built their power on fear and intimidation, but they had never faced a real challenge to their authority. "Admiral, we're receiving communications from 17 different worlds," reported Communications Officer Janet Park. "They're all requesting human assistance in overthrowing their Zephyrian overlords." Tony nodded, feeling a surge of satisfaction. "Signal the fleet. We're going to divide into battle groups and hit multiple targets simultaneously. The Zephyrians wanted a war, and now they're going to get one." Captain Brooks had already volunteered to lead the attack on the Draxon system, where the Zephyrians had built a massive weapons factory. The facility produced the plasma cannons that equipped their warships, and destroying it would cripple their ability to build new vessels. The human fleet split into smaller groups, each one heading for a different target. The Zephyrians had thought they were dealing with a single primitive species, but they were about to learn that humanity had allies throughout the galaxy on Earth. Admiral Rodriguez received the reports of the first victory with quiet satisfaction. The humans had struck the first blow in what would become known as the Liberation War. The Zephyrians had ruled the galaxy through fear for thousands of years, but their reign of terror was about to end. The hunt had begun, and humanity would not stop until every enslaved world was free and every Zephyrian warship was destroyed. The aliens had made a terrible mistake when they attacked the horizon, and now they would pay the price for their cruelty. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were not just another species to be conquered and enslaved. They were liberators, and they would fight until every chain was broken and every tyrant was brought to justice. Major Kevin Scott watched the Antarian homeworld burning beneath his feet as his soldiers moved through the abandoned Zephyrian command center. The liberation of the Antarian system had taken only 6 hours, but the damage done by centuries of alien occupation would take years to repair. The Antarians were a silicon-based species that looked like living crystals, and they had been forced to mine toxic materials in conditions that would have killed any organic life form. The Zephyrian garrison had fled when the human fleet appeared in orbit, leaving behind their equipment and their prisoners. Kevin's troops had found thousands of Antarians chained to mining equipment, their crystal bodies dim and cracked from exhaustion. Many of them had not seen sunlight for decades, and they wept tears of liquid light when they realized they were. Finally, Captain Amy Chun was leading the technical teams that were studying the abandoned Zephyrian equipment. The aliens had left behind detailed plans for their military installations throughout the galaxy, and the humans were using this information to plan their next attacks. Amy had been an engineer before the war, but she had volunteered for combat duty after seeing the footage from the horizon. "Major, you need to see this," Amy called from across the command center. She was standing in front of a massive holographic display that showed the entire Zephyrian Empire. Red dots marked their military bases, while blue dots showed the locations of enslaved worlds. There were hundreds of them scattered across dozens of star systems. Kevin studied the display with growing amazement. The Zephyrian Empire was vast, but it was also spread thin. The aliens had conquered so many worlds that they could not defend them all effectively. Their military was designed to intimidate primitive species, not to fight a coordinated rebellion backed by advanced human technology. The Antarian leader was a female named Crystalline, who had been elected by her people to speak with the humans. Her voice sounded like wind chimes when she spoke, and her body glowed with inner light when she was excited. "The Zephyrians have ruled us for 300 years, she said. "They forced us to mine the crystals that power their ships, and they killed anyone who resisted. We had given up hope of ever being free." Kevin felt anger burning in his chest as he listened to her story. The Zephyrians had enslaved entire civilizations and treated them like animals. They had built their empire on suffering and death, and they had never shown mercy to anyone who opposed them. "We're going to make sure they never hurt anyone again," Kevin promised. "But we need your help." "Do you know where they keep their main fleet?" Crystalline's body pulsed with bright light as she accessed her people's memories. The Antarians had perfect recall and could share information through their crystal network. "The fortress world of Drexmora," she said. "It is where they train their warriors and build their largest ships. If you can destroy it, their military will be crippled." Admiral Sarah Phillips was already preparing for the assault on Drexmora when she received the intelligence from the Antarian system. The fortress world was considered impregnable by the Zephyrians, protected by massive shield generators and defended by their most elite troops. But Sarah had never backed down from a challenge. And she was not about to start now. The human fleet that approached Drexmora was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 50,000 ships moved in perfect formation, their quantum drives creating ripples in space-time that could be felt across the star system. Sarah commanded from the bridge of the massive dreadnought Vengeance, a ship so large that it had its own gravity generators and manufacturing facilities. Lieutenant Mark Taylor was monitoring the enemy defenses from his position at the sensor station. The young officer had been promoted rapidly during the war, and he was responsible for coordinating the fleet's targeting systems. "Admiral, the fortress shields are operating at maximum power. It would take days of constant bombardment to break through with conventional weapons." Sarah smiled coldly. "Good thing we don't use conventional weapons. Signal the quantum torpedo squadrons to begin their attack run." The quantum torpedoes were humanity's newest weapon, capable of tunneling through solid matter at the subatomic level. They could pass through shields and armor as if they did not exist, striking at the heart of any target. The Zephyrians had never encountered anything like them, and their defenses were useless against this new technology. Captain Brian Murphy led the first wave of torpedo bombers toward the fortress world. His squadron consisted of fast attack ships that could deliver their weapons and escape before the enemy could respond. Brian had lost his brother in the colony raids, and he was eager to strike back at the aliens, who had destroyed his family. The quantum torpedoes struck the fortress shields and passed through them without slowing down. They detonated inside the shield generators themselves, creating massive explosions that lit up the planet's surface. The shields that had protected Drexmore for centuries collapsed in minutes, leaving the fortress exposed to the human fleet. "All ships, concentrate fire on the military installations," Sarah ordered. "I want every weapon factory and training facility destroyed." The human fleet unleashed a devastating barrage of plasma beams and particle cannons. The fortress world's surface was covered in explosions as buildings that had stood for millennia were reduced to rubble. The Zephyrian troops tried to fight back, but their weapons were no match for the human war machine. General Patricia Adams was leading the ground invasion when she received a message from the Zephyrian Emperor himself. The alien leader was requesting a meeting to discuss terms of surrender, but Patricia had no interest in negotiations. She had seen too much suffering and death to show mercy to the creatures who had caused it. "Tell the Emperor that we will accept nothing less than unconditional surrender," she told her communications officer. "The Zephyrians showed no mercy to the crew of the Horizon, and they will receive none from us." The battle for Drexmore lasted 3 days, but the outcome was never in doubt. The human forces were better equipped, better trained, and better motivated than their enemies. The Zephyrian military had grown soft and lazy during their centuries of easy conquests, and they were not prepared for a real war. Commander Lisa Rodriguez was coordinating the liberation of the prison camps when she discovered the true extent of Zephyrian cruelty. The aliens had been conducting experiments on their prisoners, trying to create biological weapons that could be used against other species. Thousands of beings had died in agony so that the Zephyrians could perfect their instruments of death. The fall of Drexmora sent shockwaves throughout the Zephyrian Empire. If their greatest fortress could be destroyed, then nowhere was safe from human vengeance. Rebellions broke out on a dozen worlds as enslaved species rose up against their oppressors, inspired by the example of human courage and determination. Emperor Zolthek watched the reports from his palace on the capital world, his scaled face twisted with rage and fear. The humans had appeared out of nowhere and destroyed everything his people had built over thousands of years. Their technology was superior, their tactics were brilliant, and their determination was absolute. The Emperor called his military advisors together for an emergency meeting. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "These humans were supposed to be a primitive species. How can they defeat our armies so easily?" General Krexmar, the commander who had ordered the destruction of the Horizon, looked nervous as he answered. "They have weapons we have never seen before, my Emperor. Their ships can travel faster than ours, their shields are stronger, and their weapons can penetrate any defense. But more importantly, they have united all the enslaved species against us." The Emperor's eyes blazed with fury. "Then we will make them pay for their interference. Gather our remaining fleets and prepare for a final battle. If we cannot defeat them, we will make sure they pay such a price that they will never forget it." But the Emperor did not understand that he was fighting a species that had already decided the price was worth paying. The humans had seen the footage from the Horizon, and they would not rest until every Zephyrian warship was destroyed and every enslaved world was free. The galaxy was about to witness the complete collapse of an empire that had ruled through fear for millennia. Admiral Helen Rodriguez stood on the bridge of her flagship watching the final preparations for the assault on Zephyr Prime. The alien capital world hung in space before them like a jewel, its surface covered with massive cities and orbital platforms. This was the heart of the empire that had terrorized the galaxy for thousands of years, and today it would fall to human justice. The fleet that surrounded the planet was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. 50,000 human ships floated in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming in the light of the alien sun. Around them were vessels from every species that had been freed from Zephyrian slavery, creating a rainbow of different technologies and designs united by their hatred of their former oppressors. Captain Angela Lopez commanded the strike squadron that would deliver the final blow to the Zephyrian Empire. Her ships were equipped with the most advanced quantum torpedoes humanity had ever built, weapons capable of penetrating any defense and destroying any target. Angela had volunteered for this mission because she wanted to be the one to end the war that had started with the destruction of the horizon. The Zephyrian home fleet had gathered around their capital world in a desperate attempt to protect their leadership. Emperor Azalthek had called in ships from across the galaxy, stripping defenses from other worlds to create one final barrier against human vengeance. The alien ships were arranged in multiple defensive layers, each one bristling with weapons, and protected by powerful shields. Dr. Robert Taylor monitored the battle from his position in the fleet's tactical center. The advanced artificial intelligence system he had helped create was coordinating the movements of thousands of ships with perfect precision. Every human commander knew exactly where to be and when to strike, creating a symphony of destruction that the Zephyrians could not hope to match. All ships report ready for final assault, announced Communications Officer Janet Park. The veteran officer had been with the fleet since the beginning of the war, and she was proud to be part of the force that would end Zephyrian tyranny forever. Helen looked at the tactical display showing the positions of both fleets. The Zephyrians had superior numbers, but they were fighting a desperate defensive battle, while the humans had the advantage of superior technology and coordination. More importantly, the humans were fighting for justice, while the aliens were fighting to preserve their empire of slavery and death. "Begin the attack," Helen ordered, and the combined fleet surged forward like an unstoppable tide. The battle began with a massive exchange of fire between the opposing fleets. Plasma beams and particle cannons lit up the darkness of space as thousands of ships engaged in deadly combat. The Zephyrian ships fought with the desperation of cornered animals, knowing that defeat would mean the end of their civilization. Commander Paul Anderson led the left wing of the human fleet in a sweeping maneuver designed to outflank the enemy defenses. His ships moved like a school of fish, changing direction and formation in response to enemy fire. The artificial intelligence system allowed them to coordinate their movements with perfect timing, creating gaps in the Zephyrian lines that could be exploited by other units. The first layer of Zephyrian defenses crumbled under the human assault. The alien ships were powerful, but they had been designed to fight primitive species with simple weapons. They could not cope with the advanced technology and superior tactics of the human war machine. Emperor Zalthek watched the battle from his palace on the planet's surface, his scaled face twisted with rage and disbelief. His empire had ruled the galaxy for millennia, enslaving countless species and building monuments to their own power. Now it was all being destroyed by creatures he had considered nothing more than primitive animals. "Send the reserve fleet," he ordered his remaining generals. "I don't care how many ships we lose. The humans must not reach the planet." The second wave of Zephyrian ships launched from the orbital platforms, rising to meet the advancing human fleet. These were the Empire's elite guard units, equipped with the most advanced weapons and crewed by their most experienced warriors. They had never been defeated in battle, and they were determined to protect their homeworld at any cost. Captain Lopez saw the enemy reinforcements approaching and smiled grimly. "All squadrons, prepare for quantum torpedo attack. Target the enemy. Command ships first." The quantum torpedoes streaked through space like invisible death, passing through enemy shields and armor as if they did not exist. They struck the Zephyrian command vessels in their most vulnerable spots, causing massive explosions that could be seen across the star system. Admiral Rodriguez watched as the second layer of defenses began to collapse. The Zephyrians were fighting bravely, but they were outmatched by human technology and determination. Every human in the fleet remembered the footage from the horizon, the systematic murder of innocent explorers who had come in peace. "Signal all allied ships," Helen ordered. "Begin the final push toward the planet." The liberated species that had joined the human fleet threw themselves into the battle with renewed fury. The Veltari used their knowledge of Zephyrian tactics to anticipate enemy movements. The Antarians coordinated their attacks through their crystal network, striking with perfect timing. The Krillians used their natural telepathic abilities to disrupt, Enemy communications, the third and final layer of Zephyrian defenses, was breached within hours. The human fleet had suffered casualties, but their losses were minimal compared to the destruction they had inflicted on their enemies. The space around Zephyria Prime was filled with the wreckage of alien warships, their crews either dead or fleeing in escape pods. Captain Lopez led her squadron through the debris field toward the planet's surface. The orbital defense platforms were still operational, their massive guns tracking the approaching human ships. But the quantum torpedoes made their defenses useless, tunneling through their shields and destroying their weapon systems from within. "Target the planetary shield generators," Lopez ordered. "Once those are down, we can strike the Imperial Palace directly." The quantum torpedoes struck the shield generators with devastating effect. The energy barriers that had protected the Zephyrian capital for centuries collapsed in minutes, leaving the planet defenseless against human attack. Emperor Zolthek felt his palace shake as the first human weapons struck the planet's surface. The building that had stood for thousands of years was beginning to crumble around him, its walls cracking under the force of the bombardment. "My Emperor," called one of his advisors, "we must evacuate. The humans will be here soon." "No, Zolthek," replied, his voice filled with bitter pride. "I will not flee like a coward. If the Empire must fall, then I will fall with it." Captain Lopez's final torpedo struck the Imperial Palace with surgical precision. The massive structure collapsed. In a column of fire and smoke, burying the Zephyrian leadership beneath tons of rubble, the empire that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia died with its emperor. Consumed by the flames of human justice, the battle for Zephyria Prime was over. The human fleet had achieved complete victory, destroying the Zephyrian military and ending their reign of terror. The surviving aliens would be relocated to a single world, where they could live peacefully under human supervision. Admiral Rodriguez stood on her bridge watching the smoke rise from the conquered planet. The war that had begun with the destruction of the horizon was finally over. Captain Morrison and his crew had been avenged, and the galaxy was free from Zephyrian tyranny. Commander Anderson was already working on the establishment of the new Galactic Council, with Earth as its capital, and humanity as its protector. The liberated species had pledged their loyalty to their human saviors. Grateful for the freedom they had won through courage and sacrifice, the memorial to the crew of the Horizon would be built on every world in the galaxy, a reminder that their deaths had not been in vain. The universe had learned that humanity could be the greatest friend or the most terrible enemy a species could have, and the stars themselves now bore witness to human power and justice.